Hello, everyone. I am Kenia Jennings. I'm one of the occupational therapists here at the Teach Group. And today we are going to continue with our primitive reflexes series. And we're going to talk about the MORO reflex specifically. And so let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to learn and understand about this. So definitely just an overview of what those primitive reflexes are. And also, our objective today is to understand what the MORO reflex is and why it's normal in newborns. We're going to learn the typical timeline and signs it may be retained. And we're also going to discover some strategies that we can use at home to help those reflexes, and this reflex specifically, to get integrated. And so at the end of this presentation, it is my goal for you who are watching to have an understanding as to when to know, to ask for professional support or to seek out for some assistance in that area. And so what is the primitive reflex, or just primitive reflexes in general? They're involuntary automatic movements originating in the brainstem, and they are essential for a newborn's survival, for feeding, for protection. It helps in that early integration of sensory motor skills and also that neurological development. Those are very important skills that we all need. They appear in the utero or at birth, and they typically integrate or completely disappear or go away by no later than age 1. And as just our nervous system matures, sometimes this reflexes turn into something else, or they just completely go away just to serve a different function. And so they can impact motor and learning skills. If we retain these reflexes, it can impact in those areas. That would be in a negative way, but they can help out in those areas as well. So what is the MORO reflex? I think most of you know this reflex as the startle reflex, or that fight or flight response. And it is just a natural survival reaction to any kind of like sudden loud noises of movement or like change in positions. And if you are a parent, you probably have seen this. And it's just when babies get startled, their arms and their legs, they just go out and they quickly come back, pull back in. Oftentimes it is paired with a cry, but sometimes it's not. So you may see the cry, most of the time you do, but sometimes it's just not there. And that is typical. So how do we test for this reflex? So when you come here to our clinic, we typically incorporate this as part of a standard practice to look for the retention of those reflexes, only because we know how much impact it has in different ways. But it's specifically how we test for it. Obviously, each reflex is different. For the MORO reflex, when you have a baby who is above, that timeline when it should have been, it should have been integrated. You can have them in that supine position or laying on their back with their tummy up. And what you do, you support their head and their shoulders, and then you lift out their head and then you let go quickly. And that simulates that fallen sensation or feeling. And so what you should see is the baby just staying relaxed. If that reflex is retained, what you will see is that the arms and the legs moving outwards in this motion. And that tells you that that reflex is still present. In older kids, you can do the same thing. A lot of times, when there is a lot more of that head control and awareness for older kids, what you will see is they would either do that same motion or they would not let you drop that head. They will just stay there and they will not drop that head. It is very interesting to just see it happen. So, um, you can also, for older kids that have more understanding and awareness, and being able to follow directions, you can have them do what's called the starfish test. And so, what you do, you sit in a chair and then you open your arms and your legs wide open like a star. And then you cross the right arm over the right the left, I'm sorry, arm, and then the right leg over the left leg. And then you repeat this motion, but in the opposite direction. Then it'll be left over right. And if it's smooth and easy crossing, that means that reflex has been integrated. If the child struggles, or if you see some sort of difficulties in coordinating those movements, then that is a sign that that reflex has been retained. So, when is the normal timeline for this reflex to be fully integrated? So, we know that it's present at birth, and it also, so when it fully integrates or starts moving away, fading away around 3 to 4 months, and by that 6 month mark, then it should be fully integrated, so completely disappeared. And then I would say latest that first year of life, and we also have to take into consideration our preemies and kind of calculate that chronological versus developmental age and things like that. But so I would say within that first year of life, no later than that, that reflex should be fully integrated. And um, and that at that point, it'll just be our typical adult starter response. So again, so some signs of retained motor reflex. A lot of times, the way it shows or present, um, it'll you'll see kids that are overly sensitive to either sounds, balance, movement, lighting, or just touch, and like clothes, clothing, fabric, tags, noises um, that are unexpected. They tend to be more sensitive towards those kind of sensory input. And a lot of times you see those kids being more like suffering from motion sickness or poor balance and coordination, or they frequently fall, and it's not something intentional. A lot of kids that have some, and this is like a side note, kids would fall intentionally if they're seeking for a proprioceptive input. Um, when you have an issue with balance or a retained motor reflex, that those frequent, wow, frequent falls, excuse me, um, would look very not intentional. So it's just an issue with balance, and that area has been certainly impacted. And so the other area that can be impacted is emotional, just mood swings, or just this constant fight or flight response, um, quickly getting, startled and things like that. Anxiety is another sign of this retained reflex. And attention and regulation. So kids just seem to be more easily distracted and impulsive. And at times you'll see some sleep issues as well. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean that you see all these issues at once, and doesn't mean that they're all present. What that means is these are the most common signs that we've seen in kiddos and even adults um, who have retained this reflex for a longer time. So, why does this matter? Well, a retained reflex, minimum reflex, can definitely impact the way we present ourselves. The way we process certain information and the way we respond to certain information. So specifically with the MORO reflex, it can affect our self-regulation, sensory processing, balance, and learning. As we mentioned in the earlier slide, how all those signs. If you pay attention, it clearly impacts your overall being and existence and how you really interact with your environment. It may contribute to challenges in school, play, or transitions. But there are things that we can do to help this reflex fully get integrated. And we occupational therapists can help you in that area. And there are some exercises specifically that target the integration of this reflex. And when you come to our clinic, we tend to look at the whole picture and see how all those pieces, that they don't seem to make sense. A lot of times, it's hard to make sense of all those multiple pieces if you don't have a background in, or you're not in the field. And so when you come to our clinic or you see an occupational therapist, we'll be able to kind of give you an understanding of what that sensory processing is, what retained reflexes mean, and how it impacts your child specifically, and why your child is presenting in certain ways or behaving or responding in certain ways. But we use playful movement-based activities to support brain integration. We collaborate with our families to provide strategies and exercises, just home exercise programs for that carryover at home. And what that means, that carryover at home, it's really what's going to make the difference in your child, because that one time a week or 2 times a week, that's it. That's all we get to spend with your child. But that consistent daily dedication, it's going to make a difference. So just keep that in mind. So one of the exercises that we can do at home to help this reflex get integrated, it's exactly that starfish exercise. And you want to do this about, I would say, between 5 and 10 repetitions once a day. So you'll have your child, if your child is older, have them sit in a open chair, I would say, so they're not, the arms are not blocking their movement, or at least one that is, if nothing else, one that is wide, a chair that is wide enough for them to be able to stretch their arms and their legs out. And what you do, you have your child just open their arms and their legs wide open. And then again, they're going to cross their right side over their left side. So right arm over left arm, right leg over left leg. Excuse me. And they're going to do this gradually, and they're going to tuck their chin in. And then they're going to gradually come out. And so it's a very slow, steady movement that you want to see. So you don't want them to do it fast. It has to be in this slow movement, steady movement for that reflex or this exercise to work. You can have them do it on the mat or the floor, and so again, stretching arms and legs out like a starfish, and then have them slowly roll into a ball, hugging their knees, as you can see in that picture right there. For our younger kids, you can have them, you can bring an exercise ball and have them just come on their back, and you hold them by or stabilize them by their hips. And so they're going to go backwards on the ball, and then they're going to stretch their arms and their legs out like that. And then you gently rock that ball back and forth. And this simulates the vestibular system, or stimulates, I'm sorry, the vestibular system to become more accustomed to fallen sensation. So it simulates that fallen sensation. And so because it is being done in a safe manner, like, in this case, when you see this picture, you see the therapist holding that child in place. And so that provides a sense of security and safety. And so that child knows that they're not going to fall. And it may not look very, or feel natural, or the kids may not even be willing to do it because it may feel impactful in that moment. But a gradual exposure getting there can lead to an exercise like this. And then let's take a look here. For those other areas that are impacted, like sensitivity to lighting or sounds and things like that, you can just to get their system used to play soft music, or you can dim the light during transitions. For clothing, you can provide like deep pressure, and there is a protocol that we like to recommend for our kids who have some tactile defensiveness and sensitivity. Excuse me. So, but that is, it's called the brushing protocol, and we are trained here at our clinic and how to perform that. But if nothing else, at home, what you can do is just provide deep pressure by hugging your child, by squeezing them between pillows and things like that. That would help kind of regulate that system. And there is and chemically in the brain, there is an effect that deep pressure brings to our bodies. Anytime we do that, we're enhancing those chemicals that makes us feel good. So you can do that just to help the kiddos get more regulated throughout the day, especially when they're being exposed to light touch and things like that. And so consistency is key, as I mentioned earlier. This is really what's going to help this reflex integrate. You don't have to go out of your way to add an extra thing to do to your day. You can just make it playful. You can either pair it with bedtime or playtime. You can make it fun to gain interest and facilitate participation. I like to say, maybe they can get homework done, or they can play a game, or they can put a puzzle together, or whatever it is. Just try to make it fun, so that it doesn't feel like it's an extra chore activity to do. And so, yeah. So there are some parent resources that I have here for you all. There are some websites and books that can provide just parent friendly handouts and information. So if you go to ottoolbox.com, and then you'll see the website there. They do have really free articles and activities, and there's also this book called Integrating Primitive Reflexes Through Play and Exercise. And it's also another choice. They actually have a variety of activities and ideas for you all. You can have you can go to Sound Sorry Primitive Reflex Integration Guide website, and there's other resources there for you all as well. And if you need professional support, just make sure that you either talk to your pediatricians. You can call our clinic, of course, and come and just either give us a call or email us, and we will be willing to obviously take your child in and take a closer look and see how we can provide support. So this is a time when we are now going to talk. And so, if you have any questions, this will be a good time for us to chat. Okay. All right.